Welcome everyone to the April 17th, 2007 HugNation. This is the second week that we have gathered since Caleb became a butterfly, which means that we're altering, shifting slightly. We're still keeping the same concept, we're still keeping the same intention, and basically the same format. Before, I used to kind of interview Grandpa a little bit, and we would talk for a few minutes to get us all on the same page, kind of all hearing the same sounds, receiving the same vibrations via the sound vibrations, which kind of mimics the experience of sharing space. Even though we're not sharing physical space, we are sharing a spiritual and psychological space. The same way that when you're on the telephone talking with somebody, you are in two physical different places, but you are sharing a psychological space. You can have a very real emotional connection via a phone call, in the same way that we're having a very real connection via webcam, chat, audio, etc. So the sound vibrations, the initial talking that we do before the hug, has intention beyond just my love of my own voice and my, well, I mean, sure, there's that, but there's also the intention of grounding us into a single experience. So, if you missed last week, what we decided to do in the wake of losing Grandpa, and we're only losing his physical presence, I still think he's very much a part of HugNation, but we are, instead of having a dish of Grandpa Caleb every week, we are having samplings from the Tao Buffet. And that idea is that there are a zillion spiritual teachers and spiritual lessons around the world. We're not hinging on any one. We're not, this is not a, what's the term? Exclusive. It's a non-exclusive spirituality. So you taste the buffet, swirl it around your mouth. If you like it, swallow it and get another helping. If you don't like it, spit it out and go about your business. No harm, no foul. So the lesson that I wanted to, or the idea that I want to talk about today, was something that I learned at Burning Man over the course of several years. And the more I think about it and the more I go through my life, I realize that it is one of the critical, I think, awarenesses before you can do any sort of real growth in your life. And that is the idea of letting go of what you think happiness looks like. When I went to Burning Man, I saw and met all these amazing, vibrant people, and they're incredibly happy, and they're so full of life, and they were so creative, and they were so living these lives that were so outside of what I had been taught and what I learned was acceptable. You know, that these weren't lawyers, these weren't doctors, and yet they were incredibly happy, they were incredibly successful, and I didn't really know how to place that in my world. I had to totally reevaluate my worldview, and the reason is because we are taught, we are socialized to have a vision of what happiness looks like. That can be married, that can be, having a nice, well-paying job that makes you wear a suit, that can, often we are so attached to these visions of happiness that we can't accept deviations, even if everything about them makes us happy. For example, I know people that really struggle if they're not working 5 days a week, even though there are situations where that would be fine. But there's this feeling that I have to do that. I have to be working 5 days a week, going to an office, clocking in, clocking out. And why? Well, because that's what you do in life. I remember I was in a relationship, and one of our huge sticking points was, I was more interested in pursuing our passions and our dreams and as long as we had enough money to pay our bills and get food on the table and a roof over our head, and if we ever, this is in relationships, we're talking about if we ever had kids, would there be would we be able to support them? And my partner was like, she's like, well, what if what if we end up living in a van by the river? And I kept thinking, that's a silly question. If we're happy, then who cares where we live? The question should be, what if we're unhappy with whatever we're doing? What if we're unsatisfied? What if we're longing for things? What if we're feeling unfulfilled? If we are fulfilled, if we are satisfied, if we are living, in happiness and joy and love, then if the place we sleep every night is a van by the river, who cares? And that's eventually what drove us apart. She had such a strict vision of what she thought happiness looked like that she wanted to work towards that vision regardless of how it felt, how it resonated with us. So, and for me, it was Burning Man that really hammered that home, and by meeting all these people with these lifestyles that were so outside of what I thought was a path to happiness, and then seeing them happy, it was like, you can't be happy. You don't have, you don't wear a tie every day. You're not successful. And, they kind of laughed at me, and now I realize how silly I must have sounded. So today's sampling of the Tao Buffet is let go of what happiness looks like, because it doesn't look like anything. It feels like something.
You only live once. Enjoy the color.